Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. Good morning for America and good afternoon for Europe. Welcome to our sixth webinar on product management. Today, we will talk about the balance metrics, as you know. Before start, let me introduce Qualified One. We provide product management and marketing services for tech companies. Of course, we start with building a robust strategy and help companies to become an international grade business. Previously, we have delivered 5 webinars. We have started with product-led business, and we talked about essentials of product management. Then we carried on with strategy, road mapping, and our last webinar was about organizational maturity in terms of product management. If you would like to take a look at, you can visit our website and our YouTube channel. And today we will talk about balance metrics for product-led software teams. And let me introduce Greg. Greg is our product management practice lead. He's a 20 years experienced product management professional, and he has shipped products in leading software companies like IBM, Microsoft, and SAP. Nowadays, Greg providing consulting services, trainings and coaching about product management. And Greg, if you are ready, we can start with your presentation.
Great, thanks, Burak.
You're welcome.
So as Burak said, we are going to talk about balancing metrics. And I will discuss that by talking about different dimensions of balance. So we all want to be successful. If we want to guide a team towards success, we need to define it fairly clearly. That can be at the product level. It can be in our organization. It can even be personal. That's what I do as a coach. I help people set goals, basically success for their career, and then I help them achieve that. And I recommend defining success in terms of metrics. And what we find is in the business world, there is a lot of emphasis on financial metrics, and that makes sense. But it turns out that's not as inspirational as we think it is. It's not as motivational as we would like it to be. People want the product to be financially successful. But if you want to motivate a team, they need to have other goals that they're trying to achieve. So how do we define success? I said we should use a metric. A metric is just a unit of measure. And I use some concepts that come from SPEC by the Object Management Group. It's called the Business Motivation Model. You can read that spec. There's a link. And they defined a thing called an end. An end is just something that I want to achieve. And there are really 2 ends that we will focus on today. One is a goal, which is a general thing I would like to achieve. The other is an objective. And objectives are time-bound and measurable. Objectives help me measure attainment of a goal. And here's an example. The metric is revenue in the first case. That's my overall goal. I want to increase revenue. How am I going to do that? I have an objective that says I want to raise it 30% by the end of next year. I'm going to increase my unit price by at least 15%. That should increase revenue. And I need to sign contracts with at least 3 resellers by the end of the quarter. That should give me more channel. I should sell more, and that should increase revenue. So you can see what my overall goal is. That's pretty easy to understand. And then how I will measure success, how I will measure attainment of that goal. There's one more end that's worth noting, and that's vision. Think of that as like this highest level goal, something I would like to achieve. Sometimes that's impossible, but it can still be the right thing to shoot for. Sometimes just defining a vision, if there isn't one, as a product, at a product level, as a product manager, can be highly motivational. My favorite vision statements come from nonprofits in just a few words. They really inspire you. You can see some of these things. Equality for everyone, that's beautiful. Who can't get behind that? So we will talk about goals and objectives. Vision is this overarching end state that we want to bring about. So if we achieve our objectives, that should mean we attain our goals. And as we attain our goals, we should be moving closer to our vision. That's the alignment. By the way, there is this term strategy that everybody throws around. This is the way to think about strategy. I use goals and objectives to define success, and strategy is the course I plan to take to achieve that success. And it implies that there are multiple paths that I could take. In the previous example, we wanted to increase revenue. I said I was going to raise our unit price. In some cases, I could try lowering my unit price. Depending on sensitivity, that could actually generate more revenue if I get more customers. But by setting the goal and the objective that I set, I am putting a stake in the ground. And there, my strategy is to recoup money that I'm leaving on the table. So strategy is about doing. It's a course of action that helps me achieve success. A lot of people these days are using OKRs, objectives and key results. These models are completely compatible, although there's a little bit of terminology overloading. What I have referred to as a goal, a general thing, is called an objective in OKRs. What I have called an objective, which is time-bound and measurable, is a key result. But other than that, they're functionally equivalent. So if you use OKRs, that's fine. You can have a vision, objectives, and key results. There are a lot of tools that can help us capture our goals and objectives and our vision. A lot of the tools aimed at product managers like AHA will do that. Other more generalized platforms like Asana, Ensemble, which is from Bimzer, which is a Turkish company, allows me to capture these things. If you don't have a dedicated tool, it's more important to capture them than to wait for the perfect tool to come along. You can use Excel, SharePoint, whatever, but write them down, write your goals and objectives down. Now let's talk about how we balance these metrics. Some metrics are obvious, maybe revenue and margin, but what we want to do to make sure that we're thinking broadly about success, and so that we're motivating people beyond just numbers, we should think about these 5 dimensions, and I will go through them one at a time. The first one is I should pick the right mix of categories. So, of course, financial goals or metrics are really important. I want to measure revenue, margin. Adoption can be really important. How many contracts have gotten signed? How fast are people moving through my funnel? I may want to look at retention. What is the churn of customers? What's revenue churn? An interesting one is to look at competitive reaction, or to look at ourselves in the context of our competitors. When we're in shootouts, are we winning? Are the things we're doing in the market causing the competitor to respond, to change their messaging or to change their roadmap? Those are things we can measure to see the competitive impact that we're having. One that people often overlook is thought leadership. In some industries, that's really important. So you can measure that by the white papers that you publish, or the number or the amount of feedback you get on white papers, the number of patents you file, or the number of patents you're granted. Here are a bunch of examples of different categories. You can go through these: revenue, churn, published white papers, bid wins. These are all metrics. And by putting these things together, I motivate different groups in different ways. And it gives me some indication of the impact I'm having just beyond dollars and cents. Next dimension is timing. I should pick metrics and objectives around those metrics that are spread over time, short, medium, and long term. Some metrics by their very nature are long term. It takes a long time to collect the data or for things to happen. So if I take almost any metric, I can measure it at different time periods, and that's valuable. I may have an amount of revenue that I want to generate by the end of next year. It might be interesting to have a checkpoint in March of next year to see how I'm doing on that. So same metric, different timing. Here are some examples of just taking something like revenue or decreasing the overall sales cycle time. This year, I want to decrease it 10%. I want to decrease it a further 20% by the end of next or 2 years from now. So again, same metric, different time periods, so that I am better measuring progress toward my ultimate goal. The next dimension has to do with whether the metric is leading or lagging. Really important. Lagging metrics are looking at the past and seeing what has happened. Revenue, again, perfect example. How much money did I make up until last month or up to today? Customer satisfaction is another example. Customers have used my product in the past. How satisfied were they? These are great. They give me important information, but it can take a long time for me to get that information, to get that data. I have to wait till the end of the year to get the revenue number. So it's also smart to pick some leading indicators. And one outside the context of product that I think is good is the stock market index. We hear this on the news all the time. In the States, it's Dow Jones. If it's moving in a positive direction, that is a leading indicator that the economy is in good shape. Let's say the Dow index goes up 10 days in a row. That is taken as an indicator that the economy is strong. It's not really a direct reflection of the economy per se, but it gives me an indicator. At the product level, I can look at my sales pipeline. I can look how healthy it is. And if I have got a lot of good prospects in there and a lot of them are about to close, that is a leading indicator of revenue. So instead of just waiting to the end of the year, the end of the quarter to see how much money I'm making, I can look at the pipeline and already get an indicator. And more importantly, I can react. I can change what I'm doing to better reflect or make it more likely that I will reach my revenue goal. Lagging indicators, we've talked about adoption. These are all things that happened in the past. Leading indicators, the health of the pipeline, how many people sign up on a landing page. They may never buy our product, they may never react again, but it's a nice leading indicator. And you can see that sometimes the same metric can be a leading and lagging indicator. I can look back at support ticket volume, and that gives me some indication of quality, which might tell me something about future revenue. I can also look at it as a leading indicator, and I might determine, wow, the trend in support tickets is not good. My end of year revenue target is probably off, or my adoption goals will probably not be met because we've got serious quality issues. So, part of this is perspective. The next one I think is super important given what people are talking about in product management circles today. I call it result type. If you read about product management, you've probably been beaten over the head with this idea that you should measure outputs, you need to measure outcomes. We will talk about that. I think that's a little oversimplified. But outputs are just things that you generate. They may or may not impact your business. Outcomes are things that actually impact your business performance. And then there's another result type, which is impact. And that is really the effect on your customer. So the first two, you can measure. How many releases did I get out this year? You might have a lot of releases that went out that had no impact on the business. So it can be a good indicator, but I also want to look at potential outcomes, which is increased revenue, for example. But I'm still not done unless I am making life for my customers better. So impact is a little different in that I don't control the data. I have to go to my customers. I have to engage with them and ask them, is my product having an impact on your business? And if it is, I'm having the impact that I want. So let's look at an example. I think this helps people internalize this. Let's say we've got a mobile app, it's in English, and people are complaining that they want it in their native language. So we decide we are going to translate it into 5 languages. That is a fine objective. Let's say by the next release, we want it in 5 translations. There's nothing wrong with that. We can measure that. We can see that we're headed in the right direction. But it's incomplete unless I have a corresponding outcome. And here, greater non-English usage is the outcome that I want. That will have an impact on my company's goals. But even if there's greater non-English usage, if my customers aren't getting value from this thing, then I am still ultimately going to fail. So what I would like to do is find a way to measure productivity. Some of this I may be able to do in the app. measure their productivity. For a lot of these metrics and these numbers, I'm going to have to talk to the customers and find out, am I making you more productive? So nothing wrong with an output-oriented metric as long as, or objective, as long as you also have an outcome-oriented objective. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you ultimately have something that measures impact on the customer. The last one is a bit of an outlier, but I think it's interesting. There's this tool from the 90s. It's been around for quite a while called the Balanced Scorecard. And what I find interesting about it is it's addressing the same problem space that our presentation is, which is we shouldn't be too limited in the way we look at success. So this model encourages leaders to set goals and objectives through, a bunch of different kind of dimensions like customer relationships, financial, internal processes, education, and growth. So for a long time, people have been thinking about this idea of balance. We're talking about it specifically in terms of metrics that are related to products. But this can provide you great guidance, especially at the organizational level. And then it's complementary to the things we've talked about, because within each of these buckets, I should pick a balanced set of metrics. Leading, lagging, the timing. Are they output or outcome oriented, for example? So I think this is highly compatible with what we are talking about. So if you don't know much about Balanced Scorecard, take a look. This is a screenshot from the product I mentioned earlier from BIMSR. There are a lot of software tools and even PowerPoint templates that will help you build a Balanced Scorecard. So, summary, we all want to be successful. We measure success with the right metrics. We take the metric and we build the right goals and objectives. And we should balance these metrics so that we're getting different categories. We have different timing. We have some leading indicators, so we don't have to wait to get the data on the lagging indicator. We should look at the goals and objectives we're setting and determine, is this really just an output? Is it an outcome? Or is it impact? And we should align those things so that it's an exception that I have just an output-oriented metric without a corresponding outcome-oriented metric. And we talked a little bit about the Balanced Scorecard. Really interesting tool. Even if you don't adopt it, just reading about it, it's well established. There's a lot of thinking that's been invested in it. So take a look there. If you want to incorporate this concept and others in your career, visit us at Coach BM's. We build personalized programs for people, custom programs for organizations that accelerate people's careers and their impact on their organizations. And we would love to connect. Look us up. You can send us email. There are links here. You can find both of us very easily on LinkedIn, and we would love to connect. Let us know what you thought of the webinar. And thanks so much for your time.